Castles were erected to protect monarchs and guard secrets, but some harbored something more within their walls. Dark corridors, forgotten dungeons, and voices that never silence themselves make these places veritable prisons of the past. Today, you will discover the 8 most haunted castles in the world, real places where time has stopped and something still watches. Edinburgh Castle. An imposing fortress silhouettes the rocky landscape like a sleepless sentinel. Its walls have witnessed coronations, betrayals, and executions, absorbing centuries of fear and suffering. During brutal wars and sieges, men were locked away in dank dungeons, deprived of light and hope. Many never left alive. It is said that this accumulation of grief has permeated the stone, transforming corridors into channels for ancient echoes, where silence is never complete. A backdrop that defines the dreaded Edinburgh Castle. Among the most unnerving tales associated with Edinburgh Castle is that of the piper who vanished into the subterranean tunnels. To map secret passages, he proceeded playing his melody, the sound of which was heard from the outside. Suddenly the music ceased. No body was ever found, only silence. Visitors report hearing distant bagpipe notes echoing underfoot, as if the musician still wandered, lost in the fortress's bowels. The dungeons hold even more grim accounts. Prisoners of war, traitors, and religious opponents were kept chained in subhuman conditions. Some died slowly, others went mad before the end. Modern guards report whispered voices calling for help, moans emanating from empty cells, and the sensation of invisible hands brushing their shoulders. The metallic clang of chains seems to materialize when night falls, even with nothing visibly in motion. Another recurring figure connected to Edinburgh Castle is the headless drummer, associated with periods of impending conflict. Witnesses describe the dry rhythmic sound of the drum echoing off the ramparts, followed by the sight of a faceless silhouette marching slowly before disappearing. The legend is tied to bloody battles and public executions, reinforcing the belief that the fortress reacts when the violence of the past threatens to repeat itself. Even during the day, the atmosphere bears a tension difficult to explain. Tourists report sudden temperature shifts, instantaneous chills, and the constant feeling of being observed. For many, the castle is not just a historical monument, but a place where time has become fragmented. There, the past is not over. It remains vigilant, traversing dark corridors, awaiting the next visitor willing to hear what has never been forgotten. Before we move forward in the video, make sure you're already subscribed to the Dark Trail channel and that the notification bell is turned on. Now let's continue. Música Castle. The stone structure known as Música Castle stands in isolation, encircled by silent forests, as if purposefully situated there to guard against something that must not escape. Its architecture has consistently perplexed observers. Few external defenses, a lack of basic functions, and corridors that seemingly lead nowhere. Medieval chroniclers questioned why such immense effort was expended on an apparently futile location. For many, the answer was never on the surface, but beneath it, where something ancient appeared to necessitate constant containment. Accounts preserved in manuscripts describe a profound chasm beneath Música Castle, too dark to reflect light and unnaturally silent. Condemned men were reportedly lowered by ropes to explore the depths in exchange for clemency. The few who returned ascended in a state of profound shock, hair bleached white, eyes vacant, stammering about winged entities, disembodied faces, and voices echoing like laments from a world not their own. Música Castle's chapel was positioned precisely over this rift, covered in disturbing frescoes that are highly atypical of medieval religious art. The paintings depict demonic figures with distorted bodies being subjugated by celestial forces, suggesting the purpose was not merely spiritual, but functional. Historians posit that the chapel functioned as a spiritual seal, reinforcing the notion that the castle was erected to confine something deemed indestructible. Over the centuries, soldiers and local inhabitants have reported recurrent apparitions at Música Castle, shadows moving without a light source, hybrid entities observing from the upper windows, and sounds emanating from the chapel in the dead of night became frequent accounts. During the Second World War, the presence of German officers reignited rumors of occult rituals and experiments, intensifying the perception that something dormant had been disturbed once more. Even when empty, Música Castle possesses an oppressive atmosphere that immediately affects visitors. Equipment malfunctions, the air feels heavier, and many report sudden onset anxiety upon approaching the structure's central point. For occult scholars, the castle was never intended as a residence or fortress, but rather as a lid, a seal hastily constructed to prevent an escape. The lingering question is whether this confinement still holds, or is simply awaiting the opportune moment to yield. Glamis Castle. The sheer grandeur of Glamis Castle conceals far more than its majestic facade suggests. Linked to the nobility since the 14th century, the site has served as a residence for royalty, a stage for conspiracies, and a refuge for an elite that hid more than it revealed. Behind the majestic exterior, long corridors and silent halls appear to harbor something restless, as though the structure itself has learned to observe those who cross its threshold. Among the most well-known figures is the so-called Grey Lady, described as a woman clad in grey who drifts through one of the chapels. Many believe her to be Lady Janet Douglas, who was accused of witchcraft and executed in 1537 following political clashes with the crown. Witnesses recount a silent, melancholic presence, invariably associated with a profound sense of sorrow. At Glamis Castle, her apparition does not elicit immediate fright, but rather a lingering disquiet, as though the past still clamors for retribution. Another, even more unsettling legend speaks of the so-called monster of Glamis. According to ancient accounts, a family heir was born with extreme deformities and subsequently kept in absolute secrecy. Rooms were allegedly bricked up to conceal him from the world, fueling rumors of hidden passages and chambers rendered invisible on the castle's official blueprints. Staff members assert that certain windows do not correspond to any interior rooms, lending credence to the notion of spaces that officially do not exist. Inexplicable sounds are frequently associated with the silent nights. Footsteps reverberate in vacant corridors. Child laughter emanates where no one is present, and doors appear to move of their own volition. Guests report awakening with the pervasive sensation of being watched, while shadows flit across walls absent any source of illumination. At Glamis Castle, these manifestations defy a clear pattern, rendering each experience unique and unpredictable, as though the very place chooses when to disclose itself. Despite centuries of documented history, the castle remains shrouded in enigma. Historians, researchers, and the curious have endeavored to disentangle fact from folklore, yet many concede that something there utterly defies rational explanation. Between authentic records and whispered accounts, Glamis Castle endures as a locus where the past refuses to rest in peace. It watches, it waits, and it continues to foment uncertainty, proving that certain secrets were never meant to remain interred. Dragsholm Castle. An ancient stone fortress dominates the Danish landscape, bearing the indelible marks of intrigue, religious conviction, and retribution accumulated over centuries. Constructed in the early 13th century, the site served as the epicenter of disputes between the crown and the church, absorbing the tension of an era where insubordination incurred the cost of freedom or life itself. Expansive halls and stone corridors bear a weight that is difficult to disregard, as though every wall still preserves fragments of the cruel decisions rendered there, a historical milieu that currently defines Dragsholm Castle. During the Protestant Reformation, Dragsholm Castle ceased to function merely as a fortress and assumed the role of a state prison. Catholic bishops, influential noblemen, and political dissidents were confined to cold, dark cells, frequently without trial or the slightest prospect of release. Historical records suggest that numerous individuals perished in captivity, succumbing to disease, starvation, or sheer neglect. This period definitively marked the castle, transforming it into a site intrinsically associated with prolonged suffering and forcibly imposed silence. Among the most frequently reported presences is that of an imprisoned bishop, described as traversing the corridors slowly as if still serving out his sentence. Staff and guests recount sensations of sudden cold and the sound of resolute footsteps echoing where no living person stands. At Dragsholm Castle, this figure does not manifest aggressively, but rather conveys a palpable, heavy atmosphere, as if burdened by the weight of shattered faith and unjust condemnation. Another narrative deeply interwoven with the site concerns the so-called White Lady. During renovations in the 20th century, the remains of a woman clad in white were purportedly discovered immured within one of the walls. Legend maintains that she roamed the halls long before the discovery, silently observed passing through locked doors. Unlike other accounts involving violence, her presence is described as constant and unsettling, invariably appearing at the most unforeseen moments. Even after the castle's conversion into a hotel, the manifestations have not ceased. Doors open spontaneously, objects are displaced, and guests report unseen presences during the late hours of the night. It is estimated that over 100 entities are linked to Dragsholm Castle, establishing it as one of the most intensely haunted locations in Scandinavia. There, Modern comfort coexists with a past that staunchly refuses to rest, serving as a reminder that some prisons never truly cease to exist. Ballygally Castle. The walls of Ballygally Castle rise against the North Sea, standing as a silent testament to an era defined by power, isolation, and domestic secrets. Constructed in the 17th century by James Shaw, the site was conceived as a fortified residence, yet from its earliest years it began to bear an unnerving atmosphere. The structure's imposing facade contrasts sharply with the sense of oppression felt by many visitors, as if something within has never acquiesced to the passage of time or the presence of outsiders. The figure most closely associated with the castle is Lady Isabel Shaw, the owner's wife, whose history remains shrouded in contradictory accounts. Reports indicate she lived an unhappy and isolated existence, confined within a high tower. Her demise has never been fully elucidated, but legend asserts that she was locked in her chamber and abandoned to her fate. Since then, Ballygally Castle has been linked to her presence, which is described as inquisitive and persistent, though never genuinely aggressive. The room known as the Ghost Room is the focal point for most of the accounts. Guests report experiencing sudden temperature shifts, having blankets tugged off during the night, and witnessing doors closing spontaneously. Staff recount faint footsteps in the corridors when the hotel is unoccupied and gentle taps emanating from the tower. At Ballygally Castle, these phenomena occur unpredictably, as if the residing presence deliberately selects the moments for its manifestation. There are assertions that a feminine figure appears, silently observing visitors, particularly women staying alone. In certain instances, personal belongings are relocated or discovered meticulously arranged, underscoring the notion of a conscious presence. Unlike accounts of violent hauntings, what renders the castle unsettling is the sheer consistency of these manifestations, which persist over decades without definitive rational explanation. Despite operating as a modern hotel, Ballygally Castle has never managed to divest itself of its shadowy reputation. Tourists arrive, drawn by the history, yet many depart with the distinct feeling of having been under constant scrutiny. Amidst the sound of the sea and the stone corridors, the past remains active, serving as a reminder that some narratives do not conclude with death, they merely discover new modalities of enduring. Chillingham Castle. Few locations possess an atmosphere as oppressive as Chillingham Castle, where the silence seems to conceal memories that resolutely refuse to fade. Situated in the north of England, near the ancient Scottish border, the castle served as a perennial nexus of military conflicts since the 12th century. Wounded soldiers, captured prisoners, and cruel sentences were integral to the daily life of the locale. The pervasive repetition of violence transformed the castle into an environment imbued with dread, where many believe human suffering never found definitive repose. Historical accounts indicate that the castle functioned as both a prison and a center of torture. Particularly during periods of political tension, cruel instruments were employed to extort confessions, and screams echoed through the subterranean chambers, devoid of any mercy. Modern visitors describe an oppressive sensation while traversing these areas, accompanied by distant moans and the metallic clang of chains being dragged. At Chillingham Castle, these manifestations appear to reenact rituals of suffering that have never found cessation. Among all the apparitions, the most renowned is that of the so-called Blue Boy. The figure of a child enveloped in a bluish light has reportedly been seen repeatedly in the Pink Room, invariably preceded by shrieks of terror in the early morning hours. Investigations uncovered juvenile bones and fragments of clothing concealed within the room's walls, strongly suggesting a violent demise. Following this discovery, the reports diminished, yet they did not entirely cease, reinforcing the conviction that something still lingers there. Other phenomena are also frequently cited. Human-like shadows traverse empty corridors, doors open autonomously, and the air seems to thicken without warning. Staff members report abrupt temperature shifts and the pervasive feeling of being constantly observed. At Chillingham Castle, there is no fixed pattern to the apparitions, rendering each experience unpredictable and profoundly unsettling for those who spend the night within its precincts. Even with centuries of documented history, the castle remains shrouded in mystery. Researchers have attempted to dismiss these phenomena as products of imagination, but the volume of consistent reports defies simple explanations. Between historical facts and the reverberations of the past, Chillingham Castle persists as a place where violence has not been forgotten. It has merely shifted in form, silently awaiting anyone who dares to walk its halls. Craith's Castle. A fortress of reddish stone asserts itself amidst dense forests and quiet hills, bearing the indelible marks of a past that has never entirely dissipated. Constructed between 1553 and 1596 for the Burnet of Leys family, Craith's castle served as a symbol of power, lineage and stability. Yet behind the imposing architecture and ornate halls, private decisions and family tragedies appear to have left deep scars. The silence that dominates its corridors is not empty, but heavy with memories that defy the passage of time. Life within the castle was shaped by alliances, inheritances, and rigid expectations. Women were subject to defined destinies, with little room for choice, and missteps were harshly punished. Historical records suggest internal disputes and family tensions that were quelled for the sake of maintaining a noble image. At Craith's castle, this silent repression likely created the perfect incubator for feelings of guilt, loss, and anguish to accumulate, transforming the location into something far beyond a simple fortified residence. Among the most well-known manifestations is the figure of the Green Lady, described as a woman dressed in green, seen carrying a baby in her arms. Witnesses report that she materializes near the hearth and abruptly vanishes amidst the flames, leaving no trace. The apparition's melancholic expression and absolute silence reinforce the sense of a truncated tragedy, as if the scene repeats eternally, trapped in a moment that never found closure. During renovations carried out in the 19th century, workers discovered the bones of a woman and a baby buried beneath the main hearth. This discovery lent new credence to the legend, suggesting that the Green Lady might be more than collective conjecture. Historians have posited hypotheses ranging from a secret pregnancy and extreme punishment to an attempt to conceal a scandal. At Craith's castle, this revelation transformed a story told in whispers into a mystery that acquired frighteningly real dimensions. Even centuries later, visitors report sudden temperature shifts, a sensation of chest constriction, and the persistent feeling of being watched. Staff members claim to hear soft footsteps and distant weeping when the castle is deserted. For many, Craith's castle harbors not just historical memories, but the echoes of a life cruelly extinguished. There, the past finds no repose. It lingers, perpetually stalking the halls, awaiting remembrance by those who dare traverse its silent chambers. Leap Castle. Nestled among mist-shrouded hills and paths forgotten by time, a dark stone edifice dominates the County Offaly landscape with a disquieting presence. Leap Castle originated in the 16th century under the dominion of the O'Carroll family, a clan notorious for its brutality and sanguinary internal feuds. The castle was not merely a defensive stronghold, but a perennial stage for betrayals, conspiracies, and murders, where power was maintained by coercion and death constituted part of the silent routine within its cold walls. Familial conflicts transformed the castle's interior into an environment of perpetual dread. One of the most infamous episodes transpired in the so-called Bloody Chapel, where a priest was assassinated before the altar during Mass. The crime, perpetrated by a member of the family itself, is said to have irreversibly desecrated the location. Subsequent accounts describe an oppressive atmosphere within the chapel, characterized by a sensation of asphyxiation, stationary shadows, and a heavy silence that seems to bear the memory of the spilled blood. The true extent of the horror surfaced with the discovery of an oubliette, a vertical dungeon concealed beneath the castle. Inside, archaeologists unearthed hundreds of stacked human skeletons, many belonging to victims who had been thrown alive into the pit, meeting a slow demise impaled upon sharpened stakes. This revelation confirmed that Leap Castle functioned as a site for clandestine executions, where screams were muffled by stone and by the sheer indifference of those wielding absolute power. Over the ensuing centuries, the violent deaths are believed to have spawned disturbing manifestations. Foremost among these is the entity known as the Elemental, described as a non-human presence, hideous and deformed in appearance, accompanied by an intense stench of sulfur. Witnesses recount experiencing paralysis, extreme panic, and a feeling of pure malevolence upon sensing its proximity. Unlike typical specters, this entity appears to lack a clear origin, possessing only a profound connection to the cumulative suffering entrenched within the premises. Other apparitions also prowl the castle corridors, such as the Red Lady, observed clad in crimson and bearing a dagger, in addition to the spirits of Emily and Charlotte, who are linked to personal tragedies. Sounds of footsteps, furtive whispers, and abrupt shifts in temperature are commonly recounted. To many, Leap Castle is not merely plagued by specters, but saturated with something more ancient and malicious, as though the very stonework had imbibed the violence and adamantly refused to relinquish its hold. Amidst ancient stones and hushed corridors, the past remains vigilant, waiting for someone daring enough to heed its echoes. What has been witnessed and experienced here offers proof that certain locales are never truly vacant. They simply learn the art of concealment. Stay tuned to the channel to continue delving into the supernatural phenomena that time has attempted to enter. Until the next Dark Trail Channel video.